We are a partner on Artemis. We are developing the gateway airlock for the Gateway space station. In return for that investment, we will get seats to the moon.
Hey Space Watchers, and welcome back to Space Café Radio. Today, this episode is very special to me. My guest and I know each other for more than a decade, and I had the pleasure of watching his exceptional career as well. And of course, with that, an exceptional story that unfolds. So we are recording live here at the second edition of the Middle East Space Conference in Muscat in Oman. But I have a guest from the UAE, and my guest is His Excellency Salem Al Marri, the Director General of the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. And it is so great to get his story of the UAE space here unfolded. Without further ado, let me start into that. Salem, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Torsten. It's great to see you again, and I'm happy to be here with you in Oman.
Let's start about the MBRSC. For our listeners who may not be fully grasp the breadth of MBRSC, how would you describe the center's mission and role today?
MBRSC was established 20 years ago. Exactly, actually, next February 6th is 20 years since the establishment of the center. And I was working a little bit before that on the kind of early days of establishment. And our vision has always been to obviously try and work on different projects related to space, but make sure that we're able to build our capabilities and increase our participation in those missions and eventually obviously develop missions as a whole at the center itself. So I think that's the root of that mission is always about working together with other countries, cooperation, knowledge transfer, and eventually building joint missions.
So what distinguishes MBRC from other national space centers globally?
I think in the UAE, when we look at it, we have the UAE Space Agency, which is the federal government. They're representing the country internationally. They put the space law, strategy, etc., and they do a traditional space agency's job. Whereas at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, we are government, but we are project focused. So we live and survive and die on projects. That's our bread and butter. We are not interested in many other things. So when you have projects, then you have teams that are focused on delivering and developing those projects. And also what we focus on is if a project, for example, is a project that we will procure or buy, most probably we will not do that. Or we will do it as a first step to learn and develop and then focus on how we can really develop and innovate on our own. So I think that is what differentiates us from others, that we are project focused and developing innovative, exciting, interesting projects to do, but also that bring development to the country that can support the country's development is where our focus area is.
Let's talk about Earth observation because it's one of the core activities that you are doing, and you smartly waved in a bit your own history. You have an engineering degree and you worked on as an engineer on DubaiSat-1. That's when Earth observation started in the UAE, correctly?
Yeah, correct. That's about 20 years ago. And our first initial kind of pillar and projects were Earth observation satellites. So we started with DubaiSat-1 technology transfer, DubaiSat-2 joint development, all with South Korea. And then we started developing the systems in the country with KhalifaSat. Today now we're pretty much developing the systems entirely in the UAE. And our private sector is developing a lot of the components and materials for it. Even the raw material, the aluminium, is from UAE aluminium.
The Earth observation is per se in strategic infrastructure. So how does MBRC, your institute, uses the Earth observation data today? Because building a satellite is one thing, but the juice comes from the data.
Absolutely. So upstream and downstream, when we talk about Earth observation, that whole cycle, upstream, downstream operations is all done at the center. So we build it, we obviously get a launch provider to launch it, then we operate it. And the downstream element of the data is something that we work with all of our government departments, private sector, to distribute this data in a timely manner. We use a lot of AI today, smart tools to try and extract as much from that data as possible and use it in hundreds, if not thousands of different applications.
When we talk about downstream applications, is it more than on the climate, urban planning, security? What is it? Where are you looking into all of the above? Or
No, our focus area is mainly on, I would clearly say, civilian applications, but in all of the above at the end of the day. So when we're looking at anything related to environment, farming, town planning, infrastructure, disaster monitoring, looking at different elements around our ports, airports, etc., all of these things, generally mapping the UAE. We do work internationally as well with other countries. All of the above would apply.
Another pillar that's very important for the UAE and humanity, I would say, your human spaceflight programs. You owned your UAE spaceflight program has captured global attention. So what is MBRSC's role in building this capability?
Absolutely. I think that's our second pillar, which is human spaceflight. That's a little bit obviously in a different sphere in terms of its exploration. It's looking at the peak or pinnacle of human achievement and, what we can do more, explore the unknowns. We launched our program about 10 years ago with the support of the President and Prime Minister, their Highnesses of the UAE. And one of the key factors that was given to us as a strategy is that we must have a sustainable program, a long-term program, a program that not necessarily self-reliant in terms of funding, but in terms of government vision will be long-term. It's not one-time mission to space and then goodbye. And there was a long absence of Arabs in space at the time, about 30 years, since Hazar went back to space in 2019. So we had pioneers from Saudi and Syria that went in the 80s, and then from then until 2019, not much. And so that's where we kicked off. And we started with a short duration mission. Our next mission was focusing on training. We selected more astronauts. We have 4. They've all gone through full astronaut training. They're ready. They also train in the UAE. We do environmental training for them. We do helicopter training for them. We do leadership, all of these elements that are supplementary to what you want from an astronaut. And then we had our second mission, which was a long duration mission, 6 months with a spacewalk. So the first Arab spacewalk. We were very happy about that.
What's in the planning in terms of human spaceflight programs? Because ISS is coming to an end, so it's hard to go there, but it's the only place at the moment. So next station, Moon?
Short term, we're looking at ISS until deorbit and commercial LEO providers. In the medium to long term is definitely Moon. We are a partner on Artemis. We are developing the gateway airlock for the Gateway Space Station. In return for that investment, we will get seats to the Moon. What I can say is one of our astronauts will be going to the gateway itself, and our objective is to increase our cooperation and get seats to go to the surface of the Moon.
Let's talk about how the astronauts' missions translate into long-term national expertise rather than just symbolic milestones. I think that's very important.
Astronaut missions, they move the whole country. When you're looking at, the impact of them on kids, it then impacts their parents from an emotional point of view, from an inspiration point of view. But you're also looking at the science they're doing. So with one astronaut, you've got hundreds of people working behind that astronaut to support, help, train, look at the science program of what they're going to do. Today, we have now a human life sciences center that's established in the UAE in the last 3 years, really just focused on human life sciences and microgravity. That's related to our astronaut missions. So when we send our astronauts, a lot of the experiments and science comes from these centers.
Another pillar, deep space exploration. Another thing where I admire the UAE. The Mars mission Hope was kicked off shortly after you announced the UAE Space Agency back in the year. So with missions beyond Earth orbit, the UAE has entered deep space exploration. So why was this important for MBRSC leading these kind of missions?
Well, it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. And when you're working on something that's really difficult, that's where you can make major shifts in your thinking, in your capability building. And this honestly came from a vision from His Highness that we're really pushing the boundaries. When you look at the UAE, you look at the city of Abu Dhabi, the city of Dubai, the way a lot of people said those things are not possible. Why would you'll build something and nobody's going to come? And you look at what has been created as cities, as a country, it's pushing the boundaries of what people think is possible. And that same mentality applies in space. If we are thinking to develop Earth observation satellites and just stay in that field or CubeSats, our thinking will be limited to that. But it pushed us to think of Mars, how we could achieve that in a more cost-effective way, a different way of doing it, relatively quick. And you will cooperate and collaborate with many different countries to achieve that. But that's what happened with that mission. And that mission, once it pushed us to even think beyond. So that mission was launched in 2014. And that pushed us into human spaceflight. Because you're not thinking that that's not possible for me anymore. When we first kicked off our human spaceflight program, a lot of people told me that you will not get a long-duration mission. That's impossible. 5 years, 6 years later, you have Sultan doing a spacewalk outside the International Space Station and the first non-ISS partner to go longer than a week or 10 days and to do a spacewalk. So possible is impossible, as they say, is possible. And then we shifted to the moon. So I think that big thinking really shifts your mindset and allows you to think a bigger picture, but it also changes your engineering. You learn so much by problem solving and working on these different things that your capabilities then increase and you can do much more challenging missions. The mission immediately after that is sending a rover to the surface of the moon. That's not something that you'll think I can do if you're still developing smaller satellites for Earth observation.
It reminds me on Kennedy's saying that we don't do space because it's easy. We do it because it's hard. And I might apologize if it was not the correct wording, but the meaning is behind it. You just mentioned the moon rover that you developed for the iSpace mission, which was not successful. Not your fault. The iSpace mission had a challenge. Are there any upcoming plans on your end?
Yeah, that mission, we learned a lot and we landed on the moon, but in 10,000 pieces. And I think any kind of mission failure or not succeeding, you need to get up, start to analyze what happened, whether it's iSpace or us. We're there together, we're a partner, and move on to what's next. And we had immediately after that a visit from His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid to sit with the team. His message to us, if I sum it up, was the team is the most important thing for me, not technologies that we can rebuild and develop. As long as we're able to build those capabilities, that's important. And he approved for us to build the second and third one. Now we've completed the second. It's ready for launch. It will be launched in the third quarter of this year on a Firefly lander to the far side of the moon. If we land there with the Firefly, we'll be the third country to operate on the moon and the first rover or one of the first rovers to go to the far side of the moon.
How do you communicate then back home from the far side?
I think there's a system that they have along with our partners, relay satellites, to do that, yeah.
Ah, I see. You just mentioned the talents, and I want to dig into that. So how does this science missions impact into technology, talents, and industrial development at home?
Definitely, that is the key focus for us. We are nothing without our talent. And we are a collection of, I would say, hopefully, talented people that have capabilities. So our team now has grown. We're about 250 people. And our focus is on these young talents. Some of them are older now, and keeping them excited with innovative missions. And these types of people, we're getting the smartest people in the country from some of the biggest universities. If you're not able to keep them interested and excited about your missions, they're going to leave. So you have to have really innovative, interesting missions, capabilities going forward. Again, as I told you when we first started, we are project-based. If we have interesting, innovative projects, you have great talent that will stay and work on those missions.
How do you compete about the talents? The smart people can decide. Do I do AI today, biotech?
We don't compete. We have a simple policy, which is things, first of all, this is what we have on the table. It should be passion-led, passion-driven. So people that come to us should have some level of passion for space and engineering, and we give them the platform to innovate and be part of that. And if they don't want to be part of that, we don't want to compete for their talents.
That's an interesting approach. That's great to know. My last question is, I have to go. Looking ahead, MBRSC in 5 years. So where do you want MBRSC to stand within the global space ecosystem?
What I look at as a number one capability is that we have very strong engineering and scientific capabilities to develop very challenging missions. That's what I would like to see. And I think that's what we always focus on. Now, if we focus on that, the question that you asked me is, where do I see the UAE or where do I want the UAE? I think we'd be at least in the top 10, hopefully in the top 7 or 8 countries that can develop innovative, unique missions that add value to the world. Whether it's a mission to the moon that partners can be on board our platform, they trust us, or missions around Earth, etc. So that's our focus area. I hope we can be really one of the top countries in space in terms of diversity and exciting missions.
What would you personally consider the most meaningful success for the MBRSC by then? What is your passion? What is your motivation?
I want to land on the moon. Not personally, no. I want us as a UAE to have a human Emirati footstep on the surface of the moon. And I think once we do that, I can retire.
Nothing more to say. Salem, thank you very much for your time. It was a pleasure to have you in the Space Café.
Thank you very much.
If you like these or other episodes of Space Café Radio, leave us a rating on your preferred podcast platform. It is the currency of today. And if you want to stay on the pulse of the space industry, please visit our website at www.SpaceWatch.Global and subscribe to our newsletters. And of course, don't forget to become a Space Watcher. I'm Torsten Kriening, publisher at SpaceWatch.Global, your independent perspective on space.